We have set aside most of the elements from the show for this particular hour to devote the rest of this hour to the 10th District Judge race. The candidates are both here. Dan Buscher is the candidate for one of the candidates, and Tracie Tomak is the other. Good morning to both of you. It's nice to have you here.
Thank you, Tim.
Good morning, sir.
Well, it's been a real dogfight. I mean, you guys have worked very hard in your campaign, and I think that whichever way it goes, the voters of Calhoun County will know that you're not going to have a lazy judge sitting at the bench. I'm very convinced of that. You both demonstrated you're very capable and very hardworking people.
Thank you.
So I appreciate that. The main part of this campaign has been about experience. It's on both of your campaign signs. Dan Buscher says experience matters, and Tracie Tomak says the right experience. I'd like to ask you each to talk a little bit about your experience. I mean, you're both qualified, as Judge Norlander pointed out on the show Saturday. Both of you exceed by far the requirement of having 5 years of practicing as a state licensed attorney. So the question then for the voters, and the question to you is, which of you is more qualified and why? Who wants to go first? I'll flip the coin, and I'll let you call it, Tracie.
Heads.
And it is tails. So Dan Buscher, and we're going to do that again at the end of the hour. Dan, why are you more qualified? Why are you the most qualified candidate to be 10th District Judge?
I'll talk about my qualifications. I've been an attorney now for, I believe, just over 32 years. 8 years in private practice. I was a managing partner of my law firm. I've also owned a very small, very short-time computer business for a while as well when the internet first came up. Majority of my time, approximately 24 years, has been in the prosecutor's office. I'm currently your chief assistant. I came back from private practice after long discussions with now Judge Halsey and my wife because I found I had better job satisfaction in the prosecutor's office. It was a substantial pay cut back then when I came in because I did make more money in private practice. But after talking to my wife and doing some soul searching, it was more important to have job satisfaction. So I devoted most of my time to the prosecutor's office, where I work with diversion programs, victims and crimes, police officers, various forums, as well as interact with the community in a variety of programs. I believe I'm a good candidate to be the next judge because of that experience. District Court is heavily a criminal docket. There is civil cases involved. I've done civil jury trials. I've done landlord-tenant. I've done code compliance. Small claims are primarily with the magistrate, but appeals are done to the district court judge. I've handled all those cases. I've got the experience to handle all those cases, and I'm ready to do the job today.
Tracie Tomak, your signs say the right experience. Why do you have the right experience? Why are you more qualified to be 10th District Judge?
Well, the right experience means a balance of experience. And as I've stated many times, this is a second career for me. So I did not grow up as an attorney. And by any stretch of math, that means that I don't have the courtroom experience that Mr. Buscher does because he's older than me. Sorry, Dan. And he's been in the prosecutor's office, which mainly is in the courtroom. Now, in 2017, the entire district court had 10 jury trials between all 4 judges. As a private practice defense attorney, no one had all 10 of those trials. So even though I've been an attorney for 11 years, mathematically, it is not possible for me to have had the same number of trials in district court. However, I also practiced in the family court, and that is where my extensive trial experience comes in. What's important to remember is a trial is a trial. We go by the same rules of evidence, the same court rules, the same standards, the same courtroom procedure, and the same competence. And I well match that given that I've been in the family court so long. Having a business background, I think, is what is very important in this race. I was a business analyst, but then I also started my own law firm. The prosecutor's office is wonderful because you have a wealth of experience and people that can tell you, here's what you do when you get your assignments for the day. I'm here to help you. I can answer your questions. happens. When you start your own law firm, you're it. You better figure it out and you better do it right the first time. And I did. I've never been grieved. I've never made an error that caused a client or anyone else harm. I started this from scratch. So I've proven that even though I don't have the same mathematical years of experience, boy, I'm ready to do this job and I'm ready to take it to the next level.
When we talked to Judge Norlander Saturday, he indicated that today District Judge Sam Durham was going to have 90 or so landlord-tenant cases on the docket today. Is that something that, Tracie Tomak, that you'll be more qualified to handle quickly and expediently?
Well, it's something that I have practiced these recent 11 years, and that's a very tough docket because most of the people who are being evicted or who their landlord is asking to evict them are unrepresented, which means they don't have an attorney, they don't have legal advice, they don't understand the system or their rights. So it takes a great deal of knowledge about what their rights are. The judge must have great patience to let these people who don't know what they're doing, who are terrified, have their moment in court. 90 cases with great patience, that equals probably my day in the office as well, where I would field 40 to 50 phone calls, several court appearances, people who are calling me not knowing the law, who need my help right now, if not yesterday. And so I'm used to that pace of solving problems immediately.
Dan, what about 90 cases on Monday morning, landlord-tenant cases? Would you have any trouble getting up to speed on that? Or
None. Some of the experience we've had in the prosecutor's office is handling misdemeanor pretrials. I might have 50 in the morning and then have to do 20 preliminary exams in the afternoon. Those pretrials, we sit in a conference room and talk to them, and the vast majority of them have no attorneys. So over 24 years in the prosecutor's office, I've sat in that conference room and talked to thousands of people who have no attorneys, find out what brought them here, why are they here today, can we come to some resolution that's mutually agreeable? And that's what I've been doing for the last 24 years.
what about patience? Are you, Tracie has stated that, she has the patience to do the job. Is that an attribute of yours? Do you have the patience too? It's going to take some.
It takes a lot of patience. One of the complaints that the court system has in general is that people hear them, but they don't really listen to them. Over the years, especially with my work in domestic violence victims and victims in general, you're taught over and over again, listen to the people, not once, but twice, but 3 times. You may ultimately make a ruling against their position, but when they leave my courtroom, they're going to feel that they've had an opportunity to be heard and they understand your ruling, although they may ultimately disagree with it.
Let's talk about the effectiveness of our current court system in Calhoun County. Are we doing a good job of efficiently getting justice for all, or could we do better? What's the report card, Tracie?
From the outside looking in, we are not nearly doing good enough. As a private practice attorney, I may need to speak to a judge first thing in the morning or after 3 o'clock. And I can tell you on most days that third floor is empty. Our judges are not there for a full day. I understand that some days are more taxing than others, but I find that completely unacceptable. I've said from the beginning I will work a full-time job. The taxpayers pay for a judge to sit there, and it's a very nice salary. And for that to not be a full-time position, it's simply unacceptable. The other thing that happens, and I'll use the domestic violence docket as an example Mr. Buscher brought up, 80% of our domestic violence cases are dismissed. That's a docket where Judge Norlander right now oversees. He may walk in and have 20 to 50 domestic violence cases ready to go. And most days, all of them are dismissed. And that's been a failure on the prosecutor's office part, to have the victims appear, to have pre-screened what the police report says, matching with the victim testimony. 80%. So that means 80% of individuals who are arrested for physically hurting a romantic partner are just left to walk right back out onto the street. One of my goals is to change that, and that is holding the prosecutor's feet to the fire.
Dan Buscher, first report card, how are our courts doing? And then we'll get to that 80% dismissal on domestic violence cases.
The last report card indicated that the courts are doing very well in Calhoun County. People are extremely satisfied, but that doesn't mean there's not room for improvement. There's always room for improvement. Some of the forums we've been going to the minority communities, people of color, indicate they're not comfortable in court. They may not be comfortable with some of the forms. They may not understand the forms. We may need more interpreters, more language links. There's always things we can do to make the system more effective, more comfortable, and better for the citizens of the community as well.
What about the 80% of domestic violence cases just being dismissed?
I've been working with Safe Place between my wife and myself for close to 12 years now, as well as being on the various boards. Domestic violence cases are unique in nature. If you understand victim-centered, trauma-informed approach, many of these victims don't want to testify. A large majority of them don't show up to court. If they do show up to court, their situation can actually be worse by appearing and by prosecuting. If you follow a trauma-centered, victim-centered approach, you do what's best for the victim in that particular case. And many times, prosecution is not the answer for these people. Separate them from the offender. Get them their own apartment. Get them back to their family members. Get them counseling. Help them with their children. Prosecution isn't the answer for every ill in society.
Would you agree, Tracie?
I think there is very much truth to that, but 80%, when the victim calls police saying, I'm being hurt, that's their cry for help. That is an unsafe situation for that person, for the children, which are many times involved. They've already reached out for help. What we're hearing from the prosecutor's office is, well, we don't talk to them again until 2-3 weeks, maybe months down the road. By that time, of course, the situation has cooled. We've got to work more quickly. We have to help them immediately. And I think it's a sad statement that Mr. Buscher has been so involved with Safe Place and in the prosecutor's office for so long and hasn't made any steps to improve that yet. He doesn't deny this 80% dismissal rate. What has he done to change that?
Dan?
I don't know what the dismissal rate is. All I know is that we have a victims unit that follows up with victims. We're asking the police to follow up. I've personally taken victims to Safe Place and made referrals to Safe Place to get them out of the system. Court delays, court scheduling isn't the prosecutor's fault. We do everything we can on a weekly basis to get those people here, including bringing them and bringing rides and support people with them so they're comfortable. Even after they're there, they may not want to prosecute, but we spend as much time as they need, the victims need, to understand their rights. Ultimately, we don't force people to testify if they don't want to.
It's the WBCK Morning Show. Tracie Tomak and Dan Buscher are candidates for 10th District Court. And Ms. Tomak, you listed a number of ideas to improve the district court or the court system in Calhoun County, such as misdemeanor drug courts. Tell us what the idea is there.
Thank you. And I was able to hear what Judge Reed said the other day, that he thought if the marijuana law was passed, that would take care of our drug problem. And I thought that was a great misstep on his part.
I think he said it would reduce dramatically the number of cases.
It's the opioid cases that I'm concerned with, and the prescription drug abuse. My idea is to help someone and intervene the first time that they have court contact regarding drug abuse. We do have 2 wonderful felony drug court programs, and Mr. Buscher was involved in getting those up and running a number of years ago, but it doesn't come into effect until someone is at the felony level, which means it's either a first-time felony crime or it's a second, third misdemeanor offense to get them to the felony level. That is where we are missing the boat. And whether marijuana is involved or not, the drug abuse in this community is what destroys families. It hurts children. It makes people unemployable. It makes them unproductive citizens, and it leads them to a path of additional criminal activity. Yes, it costs money, but it's more expensive to have the same individuals come into the court system over and over, to spend months or years in jail and prison. We have to spend that money up front to actually change lives.
Dan Buscher, is that correct then, that these drug courts don't kick in until it hits the felony level?
Right now, that's true. For misdemeanors, there's only one misdemeanor that the prosecutor's office charges, and that's called possession of marijuana. We already have a statute on the books, 333-7411, which deals with those. Through counseling, through probation, through a lengthy time period, people walk out of the courtroom without a conviction. We also have the issue of Prop 1. If Prop 1 passes, there will be almost no one charged with misdemeanor drug offenses. I don't believe the necessity would exist for that. So between delayed sentencing, so people have no convictions, 7411, the lack of misdemeanors being charged on misdemeanors, and Prop 1 possibly be passing, there's really no need for it.
Something I recently saw on a Facebook post was the idea of the traveling district court. I believe the idea is holding district court sessions in Calhoun County schools and on a rotating basis to reach youth in an informative and be a role model for their behavior and decisions. Tracie Tomak, how would that work?
That's going to take some planning and some figuring out. It is an idea, and I am an idea generator. That's not anything that I would have the ability to implement myself. That would take investigation with other judges, with court staff, and also involving the schools. Is that something that the schools would see beneficial? There may be a reverse where we're bringing kids into the courthouse instead, but the point of this is to make the court experience a positive experience. Let children see, wow, maybe I could be a probation officer. Maybe I want to go into social services, and to kind of see all the different positive roles that there are within the court system. You don't just have to be an attorney or a judge. So somehow either going to the children or bringing them here, it's an idea that's going to take a lot of looking into, and I'm willing to do the work to make that happen.
Dan Buscher, what do you think about the idea?
We currently have a family court juvenile division in place with 4 referees who actually deal with the juveniles that are charged with delinquency issues. District court is not vested with jurisdiction over juveniles unless that juvenile is waived as an adult on one of 9 specified crimes. We have EYES programs, different levels of probationary steps in the juvenile program. These are people who worked in the system for 20 or 30 years who are trained to deal with the juvenile systems, who have referees, who have a juvenile court judge already in place to deal with those things.
And I want to make clear, Tim, I'm not talking about children that have committed a crime. I'm talking about making the court a positive place for children to have in their mind. Court shouldn't be scary, just as law enforcement shouldn't be scary. And our police are doing a great job getting involved in the community, not to arrest people, but to show them we are all part of one team. So this has nothing to do with jurisdiction or crimes. It has to do with getting out into our community.
And don't children in school, though, already have an opportunity for field trips to come in and observe court?
Very young classrooms typically come in. At the high school level, we don't see it as much, but I think it should be a mandatory program.
But aren't there some real, what do I want to say, security concerns with, arraigning a murder suspect in a high school?
That would be inappropriate. That would never be anything that I would suggest. No, you're
Okay.
correct about that.
Also, the eviction diversion, landlord-tenant disputes. We touched on that a little bit earlier when we were talking about qualifications. What's the idea to expand that, and I mean, how would you handle it differently than it's being handled now, Tracie Tomak?
We don't have that program right now. And right now I'm looking to the program that exists in the Kalamazoo District Court. The Honorable Kathleen Hemingway is one of the judges that oversees that. They have taken the step to actually involve DHHS, the Department of Health and Human Services, who actually have an office in their district court. So that what they do, if a person is to the point where they're being evicted, DHHS has funds available available to help them catch up on their rent. They still do an order to protect the landlord so that the landlord can have that order served at any time to have the person evicted, but it gives them an opportunity to stay an additional month or two, to have DHHS give them services to get them on their feet, to stop this merry-go-round. If you spend any time in the district court on landlord-tenant day, it's the same people, the same landlords, the same tenants. Once they're evicted from one individual, they've got to find other housing that they can afford, and they move to the next individual. Their problem isn't solved. The landlords aren't happy, they're missing money, their property is being destroyed, and the tenants need housing. Most of them have children. And if they actually get evicted, not only do they lose their housing, but their belongings can be put on the curb for anyone to take. So imagine having a very low income. Now you have nowhere to live and your belongings are taken as well. We've got to do something to stop this merry-go-round.
Well, Dan Buscher, what do you think about the idea, and is it workable?
If funding is available and children are involved and the landlord's rights and premises are protected, I have no problem with that. But the vast majority of these people just aren't paying their rents. They tried similar legislation in Penfield that lasted about 3 months. It was repealed. Landlords are getting their property back months later in disrepair, damage. People are growing or selling drugs out of their homes. There are all kinds of issues. And if this program is looked at, we first have to see if we can't address the needs of both the landlord tenants and our current situation. If we can't, what can we do to tweak it? If we can't tweak it to be effective for both people, then we could look at possible diversion programs.
I certainly understand that, some people get caught in the cracks. I had experience before I moved here. When I first moved here 30 years ago, I owned a house in Kalamazoo and I had to rent it out. And next thing you know, the renters I rented to sublet it to some heavy metal devil worshippers. And it was a nightmare getting them out of there. I didn't get paid for months and months and months. I had to represent myself as a landlord. I kept getting them, this merry-go-round in court. And I finally got them out of there. The house was destroyed. I mean, they're like Mr. Buscher said, there are a lot of different scenarios that can happen.
Absolutely, but imagine if we could help 20% of the people to stop this. And I want to clarify, the Penfield issue had nothing to do with landlord-tenant eviction diversion. That was an ordinance where the rental properties had to be inspected by Penfield Township, and they repealed that ordinance. Battle Creek still has that on the books. They have to have landlords must have their property inspected. The landlords feel that you should have a warrant before you walk into their property. So that's an ongoing debate in terms of the landlords. The Battle Creek Area Association of Realtors did endorse me, and they are very much in favor of a landlord-tenant eviction diversion program.
We're talking to candidates for 10th District Court, Dan Buscher and Tracie Tomak, and I got to bring up the bar poll because 85 attorneys in the Battle Creek area took the bar poll, the Calhoun County bar poll, and Tracie, you were a former president, vice president, board member, you're both members of the bar.
Yes.
And it pretty much overwhelmingly had support for Dan Buscher. Overall, 72% said they would vote for Dan. He had an 88% favorable rating in the area of professional qualifications, legal ability, knowledge, and experience. And he had an 80% high mark in judicial temperament, impartiality, integrity, and decisiveness. Well, first of all, I want to, ask it, is this poll valid? Is it to be discounted or not, Dan Buscher?
I had just comment on my numbers. I've been here 30 years practicing. I believe out of the 85 that voted, 15 may have been in the prosecutor's office. I don't even know how many of those voted for my office. All I can say is the vast majority of those people are people that I've had cases against for over 30 years. They would have had ample opportunity to sit in their office or sit in their homes and give me an unfavorable response if they wanted to. These are people I've fought tooth and nail with and against in the courtroom on some high-profile homicides and rape cases. Sometimes feelings come out, sometimes there's some animosity, but at the end of the day, I always shake hands with my opponent. I believe, as it relates to my number, that I've earned those numbers, that I've earned the reputation I've garnered over 30 years of practice through hard work.
Tracie Tomak, about the bar pole.
Well, thank you. And first, I'd like to give equal acknowledgement to the Chamber of Commerce poll.
But that's not a scientific poll by any stretch.
Neither one are, and I'll make that clear. That was 104 members of the Chamber of Commerce, not everyone, but 104 members voted for either Dan or myself in a mock election, and I received 69.23% of the votes out of that 104.
It certainly shows a lot of important business leaders support you.
And there are other attorneys in the chamber as well. What we're missing here with the bar poll is that Calhoun County has 227 attorneys, and this statistic is provided by the State Bar of Michigan site. 227 attorneys that identify with practicing in Calhoun County. This doesn't count the Kalamazoo County attorneys, which many come here and practice in Calhoun County. But of that 227, we have 111 members of the bar. From that 111 members, 85 took the questionnaire and 82 answered the question on which one of us they prefer. 59 attorneys preferred Mr. Buscher out of a total of 227 in our county. And to use that number, 71.9%, it's not telling the whole story, and I am disappointed that Mr. Buscher didn't include those statistics when he so amply has used the media and the newspapers to tout that number, and he should receive a high number. These people have known him 3 times as long as they've known me. But what about the rest of that 227?
Well, correct me if I'm wrong. A lot of attorneys practice in the area of business law, and they rarely, if ever, see a courtroom and may not belong to the bar.
And maybe members of the bar have never had a case with me or seen me in a courtroom. And so, that goes either way. It is not a scientific poll, just like the chamber poll isn't. And yet that's all that the public has seen is this 71% number, which is not accurate. And I think it's been an exaggeration on Mr. Buscher's behalf and on the judges. I have a letter here that Judge Beardsley sent to the Marshall advisor where he himself doesn't say this wasn't everybody. He simply says over 70% of the Bar Association endorsed Dan Buscher. And that's not accurate. And I think we should always take pause when we see a candidate exaggerate a fact.
Dan Buscher, regarding the bar poll, is it unfair to bring it up when there are more practicing attorneys that didn't take the poll?
I don't believe so, and my opponent commented on my use of that. I believe she used her Chamber of Commerce endorsement in her last ad. I don't know how many members were involved. There was really no qualifications. There's no specific questions for it. And in particular, the prosecutor's office has only been a member of the chamber for 1 year now. Because of my work schedule, my dealing with police officers, victims, and forums, I don't get to go to all the greet and meets and the ribbon cutting ceremonies. In fact, I've only been to 4 opening breakfasts there. So I had 30% of the people support me, and I've only been there 4 times. I'm very happy with those results.
Well, and I'll agree that neither poll is strictly scientific. But that said, and I'm not saying that this happened, but when you have a poll like what the chamber has, they send out an email, say, hey, vote in the chamber poll, that anybody then could go and solicit all of their Facebook friends, all of their email lists and say, hey, don't forget to vote for me. I got the poll. I got the email. I was too busy to go on and vote for it. But if somebody would have said, hey, I'd love you to go on and vote for me, I would have. So right there, by virtue of that, it's hard, you can't really consider it scientific. I guess we could sit here and debate for a long time which one is less scientific. But let's just leave it at this. Mr. Buscher had the overwhelming support of the bar poll, and you had an overwhelming support of the chamber poll.
They are both a small snapshot of our very large community.
Tomorrow you'll go to the polls. One of the things you'll vote on is 10th District Court. Tracie Tomak and Dan Buscher are the candidates. We've got about 10 minutes left here. I would like to know, would you be more of a letter to the law or spirit of the law judge or something else?
I would be a letter of the law judge. That is the sole responsibility or the main responsibility of a judge. Follow the law.
And Dan?
District court jurisdiction is specifically limited. There's very little discretion. The only time district court judges actually have discretion are when they're appointed to a diversion court. So letter of the law judge would be the answer.
What about ignorance of the law? Should defendants ever get leniency if they say they don't know about the law?
It's one of the first things you learn in law school. What if we didn't know that? Ignorance of the law is not a defense. Simple as that.
All right. Also, we're going to give you each a chance to kind of go into some detail in just a moment, kind of summarize. And we flipped a coin. So when we get to that, Dan will go first and Tracie will go last. I did want to bring up the endorsements. A lot of area judges have endorsed Dan Buscher. Judge Norlander has endorsed you. Talk a little bit about your endorsements and why you have the endorsements that you do have. Dan?
Thank you. I believe currently I have 6 sitting and 2 retired judges that decide to come forward and endorse me. I'm certainly honored and humbled at the trust they're putting in me. I don't believe it has anything to do with being friends or playing golf or anything like that. It has to do with them seeing me in court on a daily basis for 30 years, seeing my capabilities, seeing my honesty, seeing my integrity in court, and seeing my willingness to do the right thing in all of my cases, whether it helps or hurts my case. As I mentor the young prosecutors and young police officers, we do the right thing for every case, not just some of them. And sometimes doing the right thing isn't the best result for your case, but it's the right and moral thing to do. I believe the judges have seen me in action, known I can handle the docket, and have instilled that trust in me through their endorsements.
Tracie Tomak, your endorsements?
I never asked a single judge to endorse me. I don't know if Mr. Buscher did or not, but I know what those 6 judges said to me individually. They know what they said to me individually. And Judge Norlander came to me late in the spring and said he would like to endorse me. I don't believe that endorsements mean anything. What that says to me in terms of our 6 sitting judges that have endorsed, I do believe that they are in breach of their ethical canons. And I will take a look at that through the Judicial Tenure Commission once the election is over, win or lose. A judge is not to endorse any candidate with the exception of a judicial candidate. There is a single ethics opinion that says that the judge may do a radio advertisement or use their name in the candidacy. The example given is they may say, I have known such candidate in their capacity as or in their present capacity, and that they are a good person with qualities crucial to the position. Our judges have grossly abused this, so I will hold each of them accountable for. They didn't just say, yes, Dan is qualified and I endorse Dan. They went on to smear me. They've hurt my law practice. We have had dozens of clients contact our office saying, why are these judges saying things about you? And so that, I believe, has really hurt Mr. Buscher's campaign overall. I have had dozens of people contact me and say, this is basically disgusting. And because of that, you have my support. So I do want to make it clear that I will hold these judges accountable.
Including Judge Norlander?
Judge Norlander, as a retiring judge, is the only appropriate person because he is not continuing on the bench. He will not be hearing cases with either Mr. Buscher or myself once this election is over. Imagine being a client of my law office and standing in front of Judge Yost Johnson or Judge Jacquinette, knowing what they have said about me, which reflects on my office.
But aren't we kind of getting into a letter of the law thing? Judge Norlander is still a sitting judge. I mean, wouldn't he be just as accountable as the other judges under what you've just said as far as endorsing a judge from a sitting position?
He has not disparaged Mr. Buscher at any time. That is simply beneath Judge Norlander.
Okay. All right. Anything further on that, Dan Buscher?
From what little I know, I believe at least 3 of the judges have contacted the Judicial Tenure Commission and got approval to go ahead and endorse me. That's the extent of my knowledge.
Okay. Other endorsements besides these judges, I wanted to ask about the chamber. Have they endorsed either of you?
No, they don't endorse.
Okay. So they had their poll, but they did not endorse.
I believe they only do partisan. partisan races in the past. Yeah.
I see. All right. What about law enforcement organizations such as police departments or police associations? What endorsements do you have there, Ms. Tomey?
I have the endorsement of the Michigan Deputy Sheriff's Association, and I have the quiet support of hundreds of law officers that are not allowed to publicly endorse using their law enforcement title.
And Dan Buscher?
I have the endorsement of every police union in Calhoun County, as well as all the chiefs of police. The only one that could not formally endorse me was Carter Bright from the tribe. They're not allowed to endorse, but he's also listed as my friends and family supporters.
Okay. Well, let's each take about, I think we probably have a couple of minutes here to kind of summarize your candidacy, this race, what you will do as a judge, and any further thoughts that you have. Dan Buscher, go ahead. You're first.
Thank you. It's been an interesting approximately 13 months hitting the road, going to the various townships and cities. Calhoun County is a great place, and the people are good, hardworking people, and it would be my honor to serve them as their next district court judge. What the first things I want to do if I become judge is, we're going through a budget cycle right now. Every department is asked to be cut. I need to make sure that we keep the high standards in district court that we currently have. We don't know if we're going to lose staff, funding for programs, if the county is going to slash any money for diversion programs. So the paramount thing I want to do is make sure our foundation for the court system is solid and that we're providing the appropriate levels of services that each citizen deserves. Once I've made that assertion, once I've determined that, and working with Chief Judge Lyon and Jack Annette, then we can look at it. Are there currently programs that need to be tweaked to make them more effective? Do we need more for minority or people in color to help them be more comfortable in the court system? How can we help people feel that they're actually being listened when they come into the court system, that they're not merely a name or a number? As I said, that's the biggest complaint we have. No one's listening to me. We need to take as much time as we can to make sure people feel they've got their day in court, whether they get a favorable ruling or not. And as a sitting judge, the thing you want to do paramount is to be fair and impartial to everyone. Even though I have the support of all the police and all the unions in Calhoun County, they know they're not going to get any special treatment. If it's a bad stop, it's going to be a bad stop. They're going to be treated the same as everyone else. And when it comes to it, that's all everybody wants, to be treated fairly and impartially in our court system. And that's what I plan to do if I'm elected to become district court judge.
Thank you, Mr. Buscher. Ms. Tomak?
Thank you. I think Mr. Buscher is right about the areas that need improvement. What saddens me is his 24 years in that courthouse, and the vast majority of our sitting judges that also came straight from the prosecutor's office. They haven't solved these problems. I think they cannot see the forest through the trees. When you are a private practice attorney, you come in and out of the courthouse and you have an absolutely different vantage point. We are in desperate need of additional private practice attorneys, and that I believe is my greatest strength. In addition to the fact that I was a former business process improvement analyst, I am trained to look at something and make it more efficient. I am trained to make a budget work. Right now I am the senior partner of our law firm, and I need to make sure that every bill is paid, that payroll is made. I do that currently, and we do it very well. I have the compassion to reach out to every portion of our community. I have been, and Mr. Buscher has as well, very active from all corners of the community. And what I am hearing is the district court is not doing what we need it to do. That is a reflection on the current people in that courthouse. I will come in and I will work for everyone. I don't care the color of their skin. I don't care the crime they've committed. I don't care the civil dispute before me. We all need to be heard. I am used to, for 11 years, listening to people's problems and solving their problems. I am a state trained and certified mediator. I've resolved so many cases that I don't have the hundreds of criminal trials that Mr. Buscher has because I know how to resolve a case. That saves money for the taxpayers. I am a person from this community. I'm a mother and a faithful wife to my husband, and I am going to dedicate my life to serving this community.
I want to thank you both. When you came in, Mr. Buscher said, "Hey, tomorrow it'll be all over." And you
Yes.
guys congratulated each other and gave a hug. And,
Absolutely.
and I appreciate the fact that both of you worked very hard. And best of luck to you tomorrow.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, sir.